Did you know that our style of attachment affects everything from our partner selection to how well our relationships progress to sadly how they end? Welcome to Chain Breakers. I'm your host, Trista Overby, and today's Teaching Moments episode will be on attachment styles. This Teaching Moments episode is designed to bring awareness and understanding to what attachment styles are, what causes them, and how they affect us in our romantic relationships. The first thing I would like to look at is what are attachment styles? Attachment styles are characterized by different ways of interacting and behaving in relationships. During early childhood, these attachment styles are centered on how children and parents interact. But as a child grows into adulthood, these attachment styles are used to describe patterns of attachment in romantic relationships. Next, let's look at how are they formed. During the first 2 years of a child's life, how the parents and caregivers respond to that infant's needs, particularly those during high times of stress, establishes the types of patterns of attachment the child would form. These patterns of attachment that forms in childhood will go on to guide the child's feelings, thoughts, and expectations, even as adults in future relationships. Now, there are actually two categories of attachment styles. It's either you fall under the category of having a secure attachment style, or you fall under the category of having an insecure attachment style. Now, there are three attachment styles that's underneath insecure, and we'll talk about those a little later. Now, a secure attachment style is formed by repeated positive experiences from our parents or caregiver as we are infants. This helps us to develop that secure attachment style. Basically, this means whenever a child is in distress, whenever they need feeding, changing, or to be comforted emotionally, the adult responds quickly and attentive to the child's needs. This child then learns that they can trust the adult to keep them safe and care for their needs. Children who are securely attached, they tend to form better relationships with others and solve their problems more readily. They are willing to try new things and often explore independently. And they have less extreme emotional responses to stress. Now, children who develop insecure attachment styles, these are infants who experience negative or unpredictable responses from their parent or caregiver. They may see the adults as unreliable and they may not trust them easily. These children may avoid people, exaggerate their emotional distress, show a lot of anger, fear, or anxiety. They may also refuse to engage with others. Typically within these children may come off as very angry, such as bullies, or they may be very standoffish or shy. Okay, you may also see these children demonstrate behaviors such as being extremely clingy, failure to smile, have intense emotional outbursts, lack eye contact, lack fear of strangers, lack affection for caregivers, have oppositional defiant type behaviors, have poor impulse control, self-destructive and harmful behaviors. And they may also watch others play but refuse to join in. And they may also be loners and have withdrawn or lifeless type moods. Children with insecure attachments, they tend to struggle academically, socially, emotionally, and or behaviorally. Now, there are higher risks also for them developing legal type issues during adolescence as well. Children with insecure attachment styles have also been thought to demonstrate lower IQs as well as higher risk of having language or developmental problems. They're more likely to have psychiatric disorders such as ADHD, oppositional defiant disorders, conduct disorders, post-traumatic stress disorders, or complex post-traumatic stress disorders, autism, have different fears, tic disorders, as well as personality disorders and other mental health disorders. There's a study that shows that over 85% of children with insecure attachment styles have some type of psychiatric condition. So overall, the behavior of the primary caregivers or parents contribute to inform the way a child perceives close relationships. The child is dependent on his or her caregiver and seeks comfort from them, soothing and support. If the child's physical and emotional needs are satisfied, he or she becomes securely attached. However, this requires that the caregivers offer a warm and caring environment and are tuned to their child's needs, even when these needs are not clearly expressed. If a parent is not attuned to their child's needs, it's likely to lead to an insecure attachment style, which we will discuss next. Now let's look at the three types of insecure attachment styles. The first one we're going to look at is what we call an anxious attachment style. Sometimes you may also hear it as preoccupied. The development of this type of attachment style is often associated with an inconsistent type parenting pattern. Sometimes the parent may be supportive and responsive to the child's needs, but then at other times they will be misattuned. This inconsistency makes it difficult for the child to understand what the parent's behaviors mean and what kind of response they can expect in the future. This child might end up confused about his or her relationship with the caregivers, whose behaviors send mixed messages. Another factor that is linked to the development of this anxious attachment style in children is the so-called emotional hunger of the caregivers. In this case, the parent or caregivers often seek emotional and physical support or closeness from their children in order to satisfy their own selfish needs rather than those needs of their children. Such parents might appear intrusive or overprotective. This type of parent or caregiver will often use their children to satisfy their own hunger for love, or often they will utilize these children to fulfill things within themselves that they could not do. So again, they're not meeting the child's needs, but instead they're looking to meet their own. It should also be noted that raising a child in this manner might also be an automatic or unrealization that the parent was raised in the same way. Now, caregivers whose children develop an anxious attachment style are more likely to have the same attachment style themselves. And this is not about genetics, but about continuing toxic behavior patterns throughout generations. The second type of insecure attachment style is what we call disorganized, or is often heard as fearful avoidant. This is considered to be the most difficult type of insecure attachment style. It's often seen in people who have been physically, verbally, or sexually abused in their childhood. It develops when the child's caregivers or parents, which is their only source of safety, becomes a source of fear. As this child develops into adulthood, they are typically seen as extremely inconsistent in their behavior and have a hard time trusting others. Such individuals could also suffer from other mental health issues such as substance abuse, depression, anxiety, borderline personality disorders, and a host of other personality disorders and mental illnesses. This attachment style can be changed with the proper treatment, although this process might be challenging. This final type of insecure attachment style is what we call avoidant attachment. Parents who are strict and emotionally distant or unavailable tend to not tolerate or allow their children to express their feelings and emotions. They often expect their children to be independent and tough at all times. They raise children with an avoidant attachment style. As adults, these children can appear confident and self-sufficient. However, they do not tolerate emotional intimacy and might not be able to build deep, long-lasting relationships. It is, however, possible for these individuals to also change and develop a secure attachment style with help. But what often happens is Now let's briefly look at some of the causes of these insecure attachment styles within children. Researchers believe that there is a direct link between the attachment disorders and significant neglect or deprivation. Also, repeated changes in primary caregivers, such as those that were raised in foster systems or adoption. Some other causes are those who experience abuse that was either physical, emotional, or sexual by their parent or caregiver. Those who have parents with poor parenting skills, parental anger issues, parental neglect, parents with their own psychiatric or mental conditions, also prenatal exposure to alcohol and drugs. Most children with an insecure attachment have experienced serious neglect, and often they have experienced trauma or frequent changes in caregivers, such as those growing up in foster homes. As we wind down, let's look at how these attachment styles affects us in romantic relationships. The first attachment style we're going to look at is a secure attachment style. Now, this is the type of attachment style that we all should strive to give to our children. And even if we grew up in an environment where we develop an insecure attachment style, as we work on growing and healing ourselves, this is the type of attachment style we should strive to achieve. Now, in romantic relationships, a person with a secure, healthy attachment style is a person who's comfortable expressing their emotions openly. These type of adults, they can depend on their partners and in turn let their partners rely on them. These relationships are built on honesty, tolerance, and emotional intimacy and closeness. A person with a secure attachment style, they thrive in relationships, but also they have no problem being alone. They do not depend on the responsiveness or approval of their partners and tend to have a healthy, positive view of themselves and others. Next, let's look at someone with an anxious attachment style in a romantic relationship. For adults with an anxious attachment style, the partner is often the better half. The thought of living without a partner or being alone in general causes very high anxiety levels and fear within these people. This type of attachment is associated with a negative self-image, but also with the positive view of others. The anxious type person often seek approval, validation, support, and responsiveness from their partner. People with this attachment style value their relationships highly, but are often anxious and worried that their loved one is not as invested in the relationship as they are. A strong fear of abandonment and rejection is also present within these people, and safety is a priority. The attention, care, and responsiveness of the partner appears to be the remedy for anxiety. On the other hand, the absence of support and intimacy can lead the anxious type to become more clingy and demanding in relationships, and it often makes them desperate for love. Now, this too can be a double-edged sword because often these type of people end up pushing their partners away. Next, we're going to look at the disorganized type. In relationships, these people tend to show unstable type behaviors in their social bonds. For instance, the partner and relationship themselves are often the source of both desire and fear, fearful avoidant. These people, they want intimacy and closeness, but at the same time, experience troubles of trusting and depending on others. They do not regulate their emotions well and often avoid strong emotional attachments due to their fear of getting hurt. Last, we're going to look at the avoidant dismissive type behavior. In relationships, this person is often perceived as the lone wolves, strong, independent, and self-sufficient. Not necessarily in terms of physical contact, but rather on an emotional level. These people have high self-esteem and a positive view of themselves, but the dismissive and avoidant type often believe that they don't have to be in a relationship to feel complete. They don't want to depend on others, have others depend on them, or seek support and approval in social bonds. Adults with this attachment style generally avoid emotional closeness and tend to hide and suppress their feelings when faced with potentially emotional dense situations. Now, down to our last slide, let's look at, is there treatment available to help people with insecure attachment styles become more secure? Yes, there actually is. If this is a child or someone who is bouncing between homes, the first thing I would recommend is this child needs to get in a stable and loving environment. If this child can get into a stable home with an emotionally healthy parent or caregiver, this caregiver can actually help this child nurture a secure attachment style. Now, for instance, someone who's been through a lot of trauma in their life, it may be hard for them to trust you, but eventually, if the parent or caregiver that is responsible for this child is patient with this child, they will eventually help this child to cross over from having an insecure attachment style to having a secure one. Also, people within relationships. If you're in a relationship with a fairly healthy person who has a secure attachment style and you find yourself being one with an insecure attachment style, this person can also help you build that trust that you need to cross over to having a secure attachment style. Now, it's not impossible for a person who's fairly healthy to link up with someone who's unhealthy, but more than likely, you tend to see people with two insecure or unhealthy type attachment styles connect. Getting into counseling or therapy will also help someone develop a more secure attachment style. This helps them identify their problems and reduce their problematic behaviors. As I mentioned before, this can be done with a secure caregiver or one-on-one with a therapist. Next, social skills training can help you to develop a secure attachment style. This helps children learn to interact better with others in schools and social settings. Kids may practice these skills with their therapists and caregivers to help gain confidence and experience. Also, family therapy can be very crucial in helping not only the child develop a secure attachment style, but help that parent or caregiver develop skills so that they are able to better serve their children and help them to develop a secure attachment style. But also, it can aid the parent or caregiver who may have poor parenting skills develop a secure attachment style themselves. So that ends our teaching moment today on attachment styles. Thank you all for tuning in, and be sure to tune in every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Like, follow, subscribe, share, and comment, for we would love to hear from you. Until next time.